Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever you listen to this, you're listening to the Checking the Gate podcast.
Yes.
I am Doug Ferguson.
And I am Mason.
And we are starting a new series.
An 87-part series for Oscar movies. However, it's probably going to take so long that the number's going to go up.
Well, yeah, likely. I mean, considering that I want the podcast to be weekly, there's only 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do this like every week. I want to break it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're looking at this taking a few years.
Oh, yeah.
But we're starting today. We're going to cover all of the Best Picture winners. Mason has been preparing for this for years.
So long.
And he didn't even know it.
I didn't know.
Because Mason made it as, well, actually, you can tell people.
Yeah, so I kind of made it my mission in life to collect all of the Best Picture Oscar-winning movies, and I have them all up until the last Oscar ceremony.
So at this point, that would be
86. Yes, 86, because the one that's happening for last year will be 87.
Oh, okay. So you don't mean like 1986?
No.
You mean the 86 Oscars?
Yes.
Which is the most recent Best Picture winner is...
Oh God. 12 Years a Slave. Yes.
Yes.
12 Years a Slave.
So my brain was going like Argo. I'm like, no.
No,
that's not right.
No, but it did win.
Argo, then 12 Years a Slave, and then who knows what this year. Probably...
Selma?
Maybe Selma.
Maybe. Or it could be The Intimidation Game or The Theory of Everything. There's a few.
Birdman is a good big contender, too.
Which is surprising because it's kind of Michael Keaton going, remember what I did, Batman?
No, it's a lot more than that.
Yeah, but, I'm making jokes. I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't even seen it?
No, I haven't. I really want to, but nobody I know wants to go with me. I don't have friends.
Yes, I mean I'm only using you for your connections and your good looks. So don't look at me.
So I'm basically your own personal Clara Bow, who was the actress in the movie we just saw, Wings.
Oh, okay.
She was the pretty one who joined the army.
The female.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So Wings. Yes.
Paramount presents Wings, the first movie to win an Academy Award for Best Picture. The story of two men who have gone to war and the girl they left behind. Starring Clara Bow, the It Girl, Gary Cooper, Buddy Rogers, and Richard Arlen. Wings is a whopping air spectacle, dominated by remarkable aerial stunts. One of the greatest silent motion pictures ever made. Wings.
Wings is one of the original war epic movies.
And it is the first officially recognized Best Picture winner, even though back in 1928, when the first Oscar ceremony was, the category was split off into two.
Right. What were the two categories then?
That's a really good question. There was,
because I know like the Golden Globes, for example, even today, separates it by drama or comedy musical.
Yeah. For the Oscars, it was Best Production and then something else. So there was a outstanding picture and then outstanding production.
And do you know what the difference was between these two things?
One was more artistic quality, and the other, I think, was production value or quality.
Okay.
Eventually, the two were combined into one, and somehow the Oscars are still too long.
Well, they try, and of course another great way is they're like, yeah, you know what? Let's have more than 5 Best Picture nominations. Yeah. It's like that's a good way to make this show a little more condensed.
Do you want to summarize, or should I?
Well, I mean, let's see if we can bounce this off one another. So there's these two fellas, classic. Oh yeah, this takes place before we get to who they are.
Oh yeah,
this takes place at the beginning of the First World War.
Yep.
Because keep in mind, when this movie came out, there was no Second World War. So at this point, I guess it was called the Great War.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
So, it starts off in a small town. There's two fellas. One's kind of like your every guy, homie, kind of poor. And then the other is rather affluent and rich.
Apple crusty, if you will.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. The rich guy is in love with a woman who's a visitor to town. The other guy also loves her. However, there's another woman, a spunky young miss, who is head over heels in love with him. The poor guy is completely...
Well, let's give these characters names. The poor guy's name is Jack.
Yes, Jack.
And the
rich guy's name is David.
Yes. The girl who's all like, "Oh, Jack, please take me now." Mary is her name.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's practically like disrobing and throwing herself like on top of him. In her mind, it doesn't actually show, but she wants him.
Yeah, it's painfully obvious.
I mean, basically anything in silent movies are painfully obvious as regards to the way they emote. Yeah. The fellow David, he and a girl named Sylvia are in love, but Jack's not too bright. He doesn't pick up on the fact that Mary wants a little bit of that Jack action. Yeah, and so he's all about Sylvia as well,
who is completely oblivious to him as well.
And she doesn't care. Yeah, she's like, oh, well, I like Jack, whatever.
War breaks out. Jack has always dreamed of flying, apparently, so he enlists to be a pilot in the American Army.
So does David.
Yes. They go off to war. They quickly become really awesome, and eventually Mary
and friends. They become good friends. Right?
Yes.
But they weren't so much before. But then they punch each other in the face and like, you're all right.
Because of course that is exactly how male friends bond. That's how we became friends.
Yeah, I remember at improv camp when 10 years ago, we went in a field and
punched each other.
And we just punched each other right in the face. And from that point on, it's like, hey, Mason, you're all right. And you just keep getting back up.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was probably over a girl, too.
Probably, yeah. God, this film is so sexist.
Well, one thing to keep in mind with this is that it is a product of the times.
Yes.
I mean, compared to, if you want to, well, again, we'll get into that a little bit later.
The war happens, Mary enlists, eventually gets discharged trying to protect Jack. Then we probably shouldn't say more for fear of spoilers.
Yeah, I guess that covers everything. Two pilots like the same girl. They're friends. There's that point of contention between them. They're kind of oblivious. For a while.
Friendship cures all.
I guess, what would you say is like the deeper message of the movie? The deeper meaning, if you will.
The only thing stronger than conflict is friendship.
Aww. Golly, I guess so. I guess there's also this level of like
blatant racism and misogyny.
Well, we'll talk about what works and what didn't work.
Yeah.
There's also, I think it is kind of just a classic story of friendship, a camaraderie in times of desperation, and the fact that even though they were after the same girl, well, shucks, they're gonna make it out together anyway.
Kind of literally make out.
Well, I gotta say is that things get pretty close between those two.
Yeah,
David and Jack. Yeah, I think this is Mason may have said it, he said it earlier before the podcast. Maybe the original bromance.
Probably the original bromance.
But not as epic as the bromance between Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen.
Oh, yeah.
I hope that one day when we're old, if you last that long, that we have a bromance like that.
Oh God, yes.
We could go to the circus together and fly hot air balloons and
make out. I mean, what?
All right, suddenly everything is becoming painfully obvious. What did you like about the movie?
What I like about the movie is it's kind of a time capsule piece, I'd say. It's really interesting to look at this movie in a social context and see exactly how far we've come. Because, for the socially aware viewer like myself, it's impossible not to sit through the whole movie and at least like 20 times switch between that's racist, that's sexist, that's racist, that's sexist.
Wait, this is what you like? What's covering?
No. It's what I like is being able to compare it to where we are now.
You enjoy the perspective it offers you.
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
And again, like to touch on that point, compared to some other films around this time, it's actually pretty mild when it comes to sexism and racism.
Yeah,
it's.
I would say that instead of being like blatantly racist or sexist, it's more like that in a microaggression kind of way.
Well, one thing I like is similar to your point actually, but also the perspective it adds into history. And if you think about it. So the movie takes place probably about 10 years before the movie came out. I almost enjoy the aspect that it kind of like shows just the technological advances and societal advancements of that time. In fact, the fact that when this movie was made, if you think about it, the airplane was still a relatively new thing. Mm-hmm. In the time it takes place, the airplane was still a really new thing. Yeah. World War I propelled the airplane into from being a really shaky experimental idea into something that was used all throughout the world, and it was made more functional for the sake of combat. Yeah. So it is a sort of a nice kind of perspective on history, not just through people and this sort of the way society has changed, but also just through the way that the world has changed, almost like more obviously logistically and technologically. Yeah, it is a nice time capsule. Yeah, it is. And also there's just kind of a charm to silent movies. I haven't seen actually that many silent movies, all things considered. Mm-hmm. I've seen Metropolis.
Oh, Metropolis.
And I've seen Nosferatu. Mm-hmm. And I saw the really really old one. That's way older than this. Like
The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
No, I haven't seen that. It translates into The Voyage to the Moon. The one from
the French one.
Yeah, the French one.
The first sci-fi film ever. Yes.
Yeah, that one. That was featured in Hugo, but that wasn't a feature. Because at that point movies were 10 minutes long, and that was a point. That was like an achievement to have it 10 minutes long. This was. It was over 2 hours. Yeah. There is a charm to silent movies. Again, sort of as a perspective thing in how storytelling has changed. Mm-hmm. The medium has really evolved a lot since then.
Yeah. In terms of cohesive and connect storytelling, where we are now is so far ahead of movies like Wings. Even in terms of editing, there's a lot of times where you can really tell that the same shot is being reused. Mm-hmm. Whether it's just flipped or just being replayed a little bit later after it's been intercut with something
whatever
else.
It takes to save a buck, right? Yeah. But also, what is interesting, though, is because of the era that this comes from, stuff like the special effects, sometimes I was wondering how they did it. Yeah. So, there's certain things I could figure out, like when the airplanes got shot down and they were on fire, you could tell that was animated fire, and their machine guns were kind of animated to look like they were shooting. Mm-hmm. But there's some other just more regular airplane effects. Sometimes you could tell there were models crashing. Other times it didn't seem like there were models, and I didn't really know how much they were actually able to achieve in that particular era to achieve those actually pretty good realistic looking airplane effects. Yeah. So I have to kind of tip my hat to the people who made it look so real, even at that point in time.
William A. Wellman, the director.
The director, yes. Yeah. What did you not like so much about the film? I guess we covered it a little bit.
Yeah. Apparently, it's not okay to be Polish.
I didn't realize there was any animosity between the Americans and Polacks.
I really didn't know that either. And wow. There is one character in the movie who is identified immediately upon his introduction as being Polish, and throughout the whole movie, he is nothing but a buffoon.
Yeah.
To the point where he is kicked out of the Air Force and then re-enlists because he's just so gosh darn patriotic.
Yeah, I don't know what the story is with that. You know what? I think that whole character could have just been extra the movie. Yeah. And nothing would have changed.
Absolutely nothing.
It just would have been shorter, which leads into one thing that I didn't like, in that it was just really long. Again, it's sort of a product of the time. By today's pacing standards, it's kind of hard to get through. Yeah. I don't know if you noticed. I did doze off once or twice.
Oh.
I don't think for very long. Near the end, I kind of dozed off and I woke up. I kind of felt like I didn't miss anything. I'm like, okay, I know what's going on. So, I don't know exactly how long I was gone for, but probably like 5 or 10 minutes at most.
Yeah.
But like I told you before, I'm very tired today. Being abruptly woken up earlier than I meant to be. It's kind of nice that I can wake up and not feel like I missed any of the movie, but it doesn't really say much about the way the movie tells the story. Yeah. If that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that it would benefit from a modern remake?
You know what? I think it could, if given to the right person. Yeah, I don't know who would be the right man for the job necessarily. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a named director, really. Just someone who's passionate about the project.
Well, Michael Bay is passionate about his projects.
I don't know if he's passionate enough about Transformers to have made 4 of them. I think he just really likes the big fat paychecks. I mean, like, realistically, if he cared about Transformers and what they mean to some people who grew up with them and really respect the source material, the movies probably wouldn't have turned out the way they did.
Yeah, but even still, even if he's just passionate about the money, Michael Bay is passionate about what he does. He likes making explosions happen.
Then he's probably not the right man for this job.
No.
I'll say that much.
I would like to see it handed off to Steven Spielberg.
Possibly. Although Spielberg, I think, maybe has enough war movies under his belt. But, at the same time, like, he's a guy who you could kind of hand any movie to, and there's a good chance it's going to turn out good.
Except Indiana Jones again.
Now, is that a problem with Spielberg, or is that a problem with the... No, actually, some of it's... There's got a good chunk of it that's probably Spielberg. Yeah. Anyway, we won't touch on that too much, but...
Anyway,
I would say that...
I think really if anybody is going to remake a movie like Wings, it needs to be somebody who is really good and adept at strong, impactful war movies, like Saving Private Ryan or...
I mean, some of Spielberg's best films are his war movies,
yeah.
So that is something to take note of. And the best quote-unquote Spielberg films is a pretty high honor, I'd say. But there's other great war movies. What about
Inglourious Bastards?
This doesn't seem like a Tarantino kind of movie. I mean, and Tarantino doesn't really do remakes. He births.
Technically, Django existed before Tarantino did it. Like there's a series of Django movies.
Okay, well, Tarantino makes original movies that are homages or tips of the hat of some sort to pre-existing movies. That's what he does, but he wouldn't do an outright remake. He could do his own, he's probably going to do another war movie. Who knows? I don't see him just taking on a remake. I think he loves his own writing too much to do that.
What else is there to talk about? Clara Bow.
Clara Bow. Apparently one of the big names of the film.
She's the big name.
She's got the top billing. Even though, compared to the two men, she was not in it nearly as much. But perhaps she already had the most notoriety.
She started her acting career in 1922.
Yeah, in 46 silent films. And she even transitioned into the talkies. Yeah, she was in Mantrap, It, to name a few.
It from 1927, not the clown horror film based on the Stephen King book.
No, this one's about a shop girl who sets her sights on a handsome and wealthy boss of a department store. So she tends to play
leading ladies.
You know what though? What's kind of cool is that even though her character in Wings. Okay, so, I mean, one could argue that there's a level of sexism in that all she seems to really care about is a guy.
Well, yeah, that's why women were in films in the 20s.
But, that being said, her character was extremely driven and made her own independent choices. I mean, yes, in pursuit of a man, but she was much more much more of a strong-willed kind of independent character than, let's say, Sylvia, the other girl, who's just, writing letters from home. I love you, not him. So there's a degree where it's sort of okay, it's for 1927. Maybe that's a really good, really strong female character.
I would say that for the time, you are right.
Oh yes. By today's standards and how feminism has evolved so much since then.
Oh god, yeah.
I mean, yeah, you couldn't get away with that this day and age.
Yeah. Back then, women were still, wanting to vote.
No, it's true. This is ages before the feminist movement. Ages before.
Well, technically, back then, the movement leading up to getting the vote was called the suffrage movement.
Okay, so is this during the suffrage period?
Yeah.
Okay. Before we get too much off track, is there anything else you did not care for about the film?
No. Other than what I've said, it is a well-crafted piece of drama. It relies extremely heavily on tropes, but considering the era and how storytelling was happening then, it's, I think, to be expected.
Yeah, also because you have to think about the fact that they were limited in that you were only able to have dialogue visually.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what's cliche now was not necessarily cliche then.
I would argue it was still cliche, because cliches are cliche.
Well, cliches come from somewhere. Then again, granted, before movies, there was centuries and centuries of theater.
Yeah.
So I guess you could argue story emotions they evolved to a certain point before then. Yeah. But that's what's great about the movies like this is that this is the kind of movie that couldn't really have been made as a stage production.
Well,
so it used the medium perfectly for the story.
I would say that if it was done as a stage play, it would be very different, and it would have very complex set pieces. As a play would probably be a lot more expensive to do back then than it would be as a film, because a plane you can fly with one person. Set piece you need a whole bunch of people to move around and try to stay invisible to the audience. But yeah, it wouldn't be the ideal stage piece, I think.
No, it would be probably very expensive, and you'd have to cut out a lot of the dogfight stuff. Mm-hmm. You'd have to sort of focus on the characters and really reduce the war aspect. Yeah. But it would be interesting to see how that would translate.
Would you say that this is pro-war, pro-army, or pro-soldiers?
That's an interesting question.
Thank you. Actually, before we continue with that question, can we just preface it by saying, regardless of any individual opinions about war efforts, military actions, and whatnot, that we wholeheartedly support troops and people serving in the military?
I like how Mason's talking for me.
I think that the PSA is important to make because they're pretty brave, and I happen to know somebody serving in the Canadian military. Really awesome guy. Nate, if you're listening, you're super cool.
Super cool, Nathan. Super cool.
Yeah. Oh, not your brother, Nate.
Oh, I figured it wasn't my brother, because if he was off serving in the military, I probably would have heard something about it.
Probably. I have a friend named.
I thought you said you had no friends.
You know what? Sarcasm.
There's some holes in your story.
Yes.
No, I don't feel so special.
Okay.
That's okay. I wasn't really your friend. I was just using you.
But yeah, troops are awesome, regardless of any opinions we have about war, military actions, or general concepts of military. Go!
Well, I think it's safe to say that even soldiers aren't necessarily pro-war.
Well,
I would say that their objective, I think, should be to try and reduce the amount of physical conflict between places. But then again, I don't know. I'm actually not too well educated in military and everything. But anyways,
regardless, PSA over. Continue to your point.
I would say that this is definitely. I wouldn't say it's pro-war because I think it does show a lot of the loss that comes with combat and war. Mm-hmm. It does seem a bit pro-soldier, and you can, especially near the end, because it says he left a boy, he's come back a man, right near the end, and it does reflect again, sort of as a bit of a time capsule. Mm-hmm. The views on war, which right after World War I, war's the romanticism around it was a little bit disenchanted, because of how brutal the war was. And how many people came back, the people who did come back alive were kind of destroyed emotionally. I think that this film, it skims over the hardships. I guess, just quick spoiler alert, fast forward a few seconds. David, as he dies, Jack obviously mourns for him.
Mm-hmm. Quite a lot.
But I feel like it doesn't really show how the war really affected him as who he is. And And, of course, that's like a difficult thing for like an epilogue of a movie. But I do feel like he kind of came back. He's like, well, time for life to go on. When, like I joked when I saw that he left a boy and he came back, a man with post-traumatic stress disorder. But that's because like people didn't really understand it back then. And so, I mean, there's the level of being pro-soldier in it. And it's not a bad thing, but it's from now today, from what we know of like how the human brain works and how it handles really stressful situations, it feels naive. And it's because it is naive.
Well, yeah.
But it feels naive. What are your thoughts on it?
I think that it approaches the subject of war with a lot of naivety and idealism, but I also think that's kind of a byproduct of the time because, out of the era, at least in North America, a lot of movies had that, like, nothing can go wrong kind of vibe.
Well, as long as we just stick to the fact that we're American, everything's going to be A-okay.
Which just kind of makes me want to shake my head and say, check your privilege. Apart from that, I think it's definitely more pro-troops than it is enlist in the army and fight in a war. It'll be good for you. I think the impact of what it is trying to say is less prominent and more held towards the end when, that spoiler you were mentioning actually happens. I'm not going to reveal the spoiler so you don't have to fast forward through me.
Right.
I got your back, audience.
Yeah. So I guess, and this is a way that, as you were asking, a modern remake might be really good in that we could approach this same story with a more like educated modern
understanding of the war.
Yeah. Because now we've had almost a century to see the impact of that wars have had on soldiers and on society. And so we can tell the same story, but through a very different lens.
Yes.
And so I think that could actually, that would be interesting. I mean, I don't know if what studio would want to undertake that. I mean, it seems like these days all studios want to make is comic book movies. but it'd be interesting to see if Wings could be made.
Either it is on public domain, which means anybody could do it, or you would need to leave it up to like Paramount.
So let's talk about William A. Wellman. He's the director of the film. Born in the 1800s, 1896, and died at the age of 79 in 1975. It looks like he's actually directed quite a few movies.
Yeah.
In fact, a whole lifetime's worth.
Well, also, like back in the day, movies were getting directed every week.
Not all of them were the same quality as The Wings. I mean, in 1926, the year before alone, he directed 3 movies, one of which must be highlighted is called The Boob.
Oh.
It's a silent romantic comedy.
Of course it is.
Yes. Well, which leads me into one of my my next notes about Wings.
Hurrah for Bubbles?
Hurrah for Bubbles. Actually, that wasn't what I was going to say. I was going to say it is one of the first movies, apparently, to have nudity in it. I was legitimately shocked. It's very quick, very brief nudity, but it's there. It's like, wait a minute, from the 20s?
Yep.
Shocking. But yeah. Also, I guess it's worth noting that
as I mentioned when you pointed it out, they didn't have a pause button.
There was no pause button.
So it was like 3 seconds and then, she's covering up.
If even 3 seconds.
Yeah.
But also, yes, there's a line in this movie. It's literally, hooray for Bubbles. And I said to Mason, this may be the only Best Picture or Oscar-nominated film even that has the line "Hooray for Bubbles" in it. But you know what? Now we know it's out there.
Can we turn that into a hashtag?
Hashtag Hooray for Bubbles.
Hashtag Hooray for Bubbles.
Maybe. It looks like he did a lot of movies that had something to do with war.
Yep. He served in World War I, I think.
Yeah, it looks like he used to be a pilot himself, actually. Yeah. So, which is probably why he moved out of that. I guess he may have been a pilot in World War I. Looks like.
Yep.
I guess after the war was over, he decided to move to a film career. Use what he knows. It's another case like, make what you know. And he knew about flying, and he made some pilot movies.
Long and varied career. Buddy Rogers is in the movie.
Buddy Rogers, yeah, he plays Jack. His picture is in the Wikipedia is from Wings, and he was also apparently a jazz musician. Good job, buddy. Buddy Rogers. He was also in some movies: Paramount on Parade, Safety in Numbers, Follow Through, The Slippery Pearls, Road to Reno. Again, all this is unfortunately, like, as a film buff, This is an era which I'm just not that familiar with. There's a lot of like really old movies I haven't gotten to seeing.
Yeah, and as unfamiliar as I am with the era, I'm probably a little bit more familiar with German Expressionism, to be honest.
But hey, he lived to be a really ripe old age of 94. He died in 1999.
Yep.
So well within our lifetime. And Richard Arlen, who played
David.
At the beginning of the movie, not so much as the movie progressed, he looked to me like an old-timey Tom Cruise.
Yep.
But then I stopped seeing it as the... he did an Alice in Wonderland adaptation in 1933. That's My Baby. I don't know much about it. The Big Bonanza. I feel like I've heard that one before. He was also on Paramount on Parade, with same as Clara Bow. That's all we got to say about that, about those actors.
Very good performances for a silent film.
I mean, yeah, you always have to sort of accept the fact that the acting style for silent movies
is very theater.
Very theater, yeah, very different. There's no realism to it. Well, there's sometimes there was a little bit of realism, and it's kind of nice when you can see that in the actor's eyes. Like there is something really going on there. It's not just like over exaggerated mannerisms. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is,
yeah,
but it's nice when you can kind of see some really good acting mixed in there.
Yeah, sometimes it really works. Like Charlie Chaplin's The Kid.
Yeah, which I haven't seen.
Oh God, it's really good.
I mean, I should see more Chaplin.
Yes, you should see all of Chaplin because Chaplin was brilliant. And then you should see the Robert Downey Jr. movie Chaplin, where he plays Charlie Chaplin.
I heard he does a really great job.
He does an amazing job.
Mm-hmm. So if we want to have a look at the Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter gives this movie a 97%, and the critical consensus says subsequent war epics may have borrowed heavily from the original Best Picture winner, but they've all lacked Clara Bow's luminous screen presence and William Wellman's deft direction.
That's film critic lingo for she's very pretty.
Yes. She makes me attracted to her.
Oh, 1920s.
For critics, at least, this movie has the tested time pretty well. Let's see. Any I guess, would you recommend this film, and who would you recommend it to?
I would recommend it to wannabe poser film buffs.
Wannabe poser film buffs? Why not just actual film buffs?
Because if you're a real film buff, then two of the first movies you will see are Citizen Kane and Wings.
Really? I just only watched Wings for the first time today.
Yeah, and now you can call yourself a film buff. High five.
Yay, I'm officially a film buff. You see, I don't know if that... I don't feel like Wings is one of those ones that you absolutely have to see. I think it's a nice piece of history, but it doesn't seem like it's one that, if you haven't seen it, you're not a fan of cinema. I just don't know if this is one that you have to see in order to be considered a film buff.
Well, it is a prominent film in movie history.
It is.
You need to be extremely well aware of it.
I just think to call it like mandatory viewing. So I'm going to agree on one point. If you're a film buff, I think you should check it out. I think that if you don't mind silent movies, because some people just can't get through silent movies, and so cut them a little slack. But if you don't mind silent movies, it's a good one to see. And especially again, like, because there's a lot to like, and it's really cool just to get a little bit of that cultural context.
Well, in terms of like award-winning movies, this was the last one until 2011.
Last silent film.
Last silent film.
Well, yes, that's because then suddenly, once movies could talk, that's what was primarily being made.
Yeah.
So,
but even if you have trouble getting through silent movies, if you want extremely significant films in movie history, this is a place to start, and then you don't have to worry about any other silent films until The Artist, which you should also see.
But I'd even say, like, there's silent films that are more important to see than this one.
I would rank the importance equally amongst silent films and Wings.
I think if you want like really significant cultural impact kind of silent films, I guess I'm a little biased because these are the ones I've seen before, but I also found them like easier to get through. Metropolis and Nosferatu. I'd say that I enjoyed them more, and I'd say that they've become more iconic and have had more impact. I would say it's worth watching if you're a film buff. What would you give it out of 5 stars?
3.9.
0.9?
0.9.
Why don't you just go with 4?
Because of how often I had to say, that's racist and that's sexist.
Okay, my understanding of the 5-point system was that you could go 3.5, 4. You throw in a 0.9 and it just makes the math too hard.
Well, IMDb can do 0.9s.
Yeah, but they base it off of so many users. It's an average of based off of 6,525 users, 7.8. And it's all done, but you're one person. You can commit to the 4. If you want to say 4, just commit to the 4. If you can't commit to 4, you can do 3.5.
But it's less than 4, but more than 3.5.
3.75 if you have to. if you absolutely have to.
Okay. 3.95.
That's worse. That's worse. Oh, why do you do this to me? Well, I'm glad you're having a good time.
I'm having such a good time. I should do this more often. Your reaction is hilarious.
My brain is leaking through my ears. Okay, so
I can see it.
I would give it 3 stars out of 5. I feel that it's a pleasant trip to another time, but realistically, a little hard to get through. From start to finish, a little hard to get through. I slept through pieces of it. Don't really feel like I need to catch up on it. On what I missed. I'll stick with the 3. I think it's a pretty nice score. But I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I watched it because it's, again, a little piece of film history. It's another notch in my film belt. It's valuable history, and I think that watching any movie is valuable for aspiring filmmakers or movie lovers to learn more about the art and the craft of film.
Yeah, especially shooting planes with a camera, not so much a gun.
Yeah, although there's a lot of that, both of those in this movie. Cool, I'm feeling all right about that.
Yeah. So, are we going to be doing this chronologically?
Oh, all the Oscar-winning films? Yeah, let's do it from start to finish, man.
Awesome. So then, if I remember the list correctly, number 2 is going to be the Broadway Melody, 1929.
Okay, which is a talkie.
It
is a talking movie.
It is the first Oscar winner that was a talkie, had audible sound, not, an organ playing in the background through the whole thing. And it's also the first musical to win. Mason and Doug do the Oscars.
We do the Oscars.
Nightly.
All right. Enough of that. Thank you so much for listening to the Checking the Gate podcast. Thanks so much for listening. This is Doug.
And Mason.
Farewell, and we're moving on.